Please welcome to the TEDxSonomaCounty stage, Lee Ross.
It's a pleasure to be here. After seeing the first three presentations, I actually have a new title for my talk, and it's Perspectives on Perspectives. Let me start out with a few provocative everyday experiences. All of you have had the first one. You're driving on the highway, and you notice that there's two kinds of people. There's maniacs driving faster than you and idiots driving slower. If you have elderly parents, you're probably familiar with what we call thermostat wars and TV volume wars, where each insists that there's something seriously wrong with the other's internal thermostat or their hearing. Different ethnic groups often wonder at the really weird tastes that other people have. They like food incredibly spicy or hopelessly bland. We have very different tastes in art. I look at modern art sometimes and I say, it's just a bunch of lines and dots. Who can take that seriously? Why isn't it classic, like the work, say, of the Fauvists, who, of course, were thought to be renegades in their time? And I won't even talk about tastes in music, contemporary and older. There are more serious issues. What are the most important and difficult problems facing our society? How much emphasis should we give to the climate change, or to the economy, or to social inequality? And then, of course, we all have differing opinions about how hard tasks are and how easy. My wife thinks it's ridiculous that my daughter doesn't know how to sew a button. She thinks it's ridiculous that my wife doesn't know how to navigate the internet. So, in each of these cases, people somehow or other believe that their take on the world is the objective one. And what has to be understood or explained is, what is there about those other people that seem to get it wrong? Now, underlying this issue of the illusion of objectivity is, of course, a much more fundamental illusion. When you say the word fundamental, that usually triggers Albert Einstein, who says, reality is an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. I'll spare you the details of how physicists see the world and how the rest of us see the world, but a couple of examples will suffice, or maybe only one. You're all sitting in a chair, and you have the illusion that you're sitting on a chair, making contact. Any physicist would tell you that no, that's actually not what's happening. If it was just you sitting on the chair, you'd go right through the chair because there's so much space between the electrons and the things that make up the atoms of your body and the chair. Actually, you're hovering a safe 1/100 of a millionth over the chair. And the negative force field around you and the negative force field around the chair are repelling each other, keeping you at that safe distance. Okay, well, all of those are... all of those are compelling examples. We sometimes call them night school metaphysics. But this becomes the illusion that we have about reality normally doesn't matter very much, because for the most part we humans share these illusions when it comes to physical reality. We all live in the world of noisy construction sites, solid chairs, and juicy red apples. Now, we know that there are There are some people who are hard of hearing or have difficulties with vision, and they don't quite see the things the way they really are. We use terms like blindness and deafness. I notice that none of us walk around saying about each other that, unlike dogs, which are colorblind, we're all odor blind. There's this incredibly smelly world out there that we're just blind to. No, we can't escape our own perspective. Now, so far that's not much of a problem. When does it become a problem? I'm afraid this is a very timely and touchy issue. This becomes a problem when we talk about complex, difficult social issues that face us and challenges, like elections. Let me introduce you to a very wordy slide, I'm afraid, but it talks about the objectivity illusion and its consequences. So the first main conviction that I've been anticipating is that we have the notion that the way we think and feel and perceive about the world is the way it really is. And for that reason, we think that people who disagree with us can be brought around if only they'll listen to us. If only to let us explain how things are. I've done a lot of conflict resolution work in different parts of the world, and I often find people are eager to talk to folks on the other side. Why? Because they want to make the other side see the error of their ways. Nobody's ever said they wanted to go into a citizen dialogue because they think they're wrong about everything and they want to be set straight. The most important consequence, however, is the way in which the illusion of objectivity produces enmity and distrust, that we make negative attributions about those who disagree with us. We say either they're stupid or unreasonable or irrational, or they've in particular succumbed to various kinds of biases. So let me offer a few wise quotations and then a little bit of kind of mundane academic research by me. So we have Oscar Wilde saying, "In all matters of opinion, our adversaries are completely insane." Well, there are some matters of opinion right now that many of us think our adversaries are insane. Here's a more serious, longer quotation by the great philosopher Isaiah Berlin, and he talks about the harm done by the fact that we have the notion that we see things the way they really are, that we're right, and that those who differ are not merely mistaken, but wicked or mad, that they need restraining or suppressing, that we alone have the magical eye and the truth. And that's a very, very common and dangerous human perception. Here's Matthew 7:3 talking, a very well-known quote, about the fact that we are pretty aware of biases. We just have a blind spot when it comes to our own. And finally, the good Yankee Quaker, Benjamin Franklin, saying, "Most men indeed, as well as most sections and religions, think themselves in possession of the truth, and to the extent that other people disagree, it is so far error." Well, we did a little study on this, a very simple study. We had a room full of people very much like this. We had them fill out a political questionnaire in which they gave their views about lots of things, abortion, civil rights, lots of political figures, media. We just collected them at random, and then we redistributed them at random. So everyone was looking at someone else's questionnaire, and we asked them two questions. How similar are that person's views to you, to your own, and to what extent did those views reflect various rational bases for making judgments, facts, knowledge, sound reasoning? To what extent did they reflect biases, the effect of propaganda or self-interest and the like? And we found a very compelling result. Basically, people believed that their own views pretty consistently were the result of rational thinking rather than bias. When it came to other people, to the extent that they disagreed, it was to that extent that their opinions were dictated by errors and biases rather than rationality. One more study, briefly, very timely one. I know you all came here to get away from thinking about the election, and we keep dragging you back to it. This is a study in which we asked a very large sample of people about Donald Trump supporters and Hillary Clinton supporters. And the people we asked, some of them were Clinton supporters, some were Trump supporters, some were neutral. And again, we asked about bias versus error. So when we looked at Clinton supporters, they thought basically that Trump supporters were nuts. And Clinton supporters were quite reasonable. When we asked Trump supporters, they thought the opposite. And it's rather scary to note when we asked neutral folks, they thought they both were pretty bad. Okay, so how do we get out of this dilemma? Is it enough to just obey the golden rule and say all these differences in perception don't matter? If we just treat people the way they're supposed to, if we do unto them as they should do unto us, everything will be okay. George Bernard Shaw warns us about the folly of that. He says, never do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Their tastes may be different. An alternative, more modest suggestion is that of the Rabbi Hillel, writing at the time of Christ, who said, that which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. That is the whole Torah. The rest is just commentary. That would be a good place to leave things, but I do want to leave with a little bit of a note of hope, and I want to show you one example of what it means to get beyond the objectivity basis. This is a quotation by Frederick Douglass at the time of the dedication of the Freedom Memorial Monument for Lincoln. And so Douglass had been a critic of Lincoln all his life, urging him to do more. And he says, viewed from genuine abolitionist ground, Mr. Lincoln seemed tardy, cold, dull, and indifferent. And then he goes on in this remarkable way. He says, but seeing him the way he ought to be seen, in terms of the light of history, taking everything in consideration, infinite wisdom has never sent any man into the world better fitted for his mission than Abraham Lincoln. Well, we can't all have the eloquence of Frederick Douglass, but we can try harder to be rational about irrationality, to reflect very carefully before we make negative attributions about the rationality and integrity of those who disagree with us, or even those who set the thermostat too high. This talk, by the way, is the first chapter of a book on the wisest in the room, and I hope the talks you're hearing today will I know they will, make you all leave this room being a little wiser. Thank you.